Hi, today I'm going to show a demo of deploying Keycloak onto Kubernetes. I'm going to also deploy a backend service and a frontend application to Kubernetes as well. And of course, I'm going to secure both the service and the application with Keycloak. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to set a few environment variables that I'm going to use throughout when I'm creating resources on Kubernetes. And these are specifying the host names that I want for my Keycloak, for my backend, and my frontend. I'm using nip.io because I don't have a real DNS server set up for these hosts, and I'm obviously running this locally on my laptop. I need to be able to access all of these from my web browser because it's an HTML5 application, so that needs to be able to access the backend. And of course, as we're securing it with Keycloak, we also have to be able to reach Keycloak. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to create Keycloak. So I've got a YAML file for Keycloak that describes my Keycloak deployment as well as my Keycloak services. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create an ingress for Keycloak so that I can access it on the above URL. So we can see here that I'm cutting the actual Keycloak ingress YAML file, and then I'm replacing a template called Keycloak host with the above environment variable so that I can get the proper host name defined in my ingress. Okay, so that's that up and running. I can now go and I do an echo of the Keycloak host so I can get the actual URL that I should be visiting Keycloak on. Right, so here's the Keycloak welcome page. So I'm going to go to the admin console and I'm going to log in. And then I'm going to create a realm for my demo. Right, so I'm using a predefined realm in a JSON file that describes everything that I need inside the realm for this demo. So let's have a quick look at that. It's created a realm called demo, and inside that there's a client that it's created called app, and this is the front-end application. Then it has also created two roles. It's created a role called admin and a role called user. And these are what we're going to use to secure our backend application. And then finally, it's created a user called Stian, and this user has the role user. Okay, so that's all we need to do in Keycloak to get it up and running. What we're going to do now is that we're going to deploy the backend service. So let's have a quick look at the backend application first. So it's a simple Node.js application secured with a Keycloak Node.js adapter. We can see here that it has a few very simple endpoints. It's got one called public, it's got one called secured, and you can see here that it's calling this special keycloak.protect with realm user. That's all I need to do to be able to secure this particular endpoint with the user role that we defined before. And it also has a final one called admin that is secured with the admin role instead. And we can see there's very little code that's needed to be able to secure our Node.js application with Keycloak. Okay, so let's go ahead and deploy that to Kubernetes. So we've wrapped it in a Docker container. So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to deploy this, build and deploy this Docker container onto the Docker registry on Kubernetes. And then we're going to again deploy the deployment for the backend as well as the service for the backend, which is defined in this YAML file here. And again, I'm doing a set to replace the Keycloak hostname with the actual Keycloak hostname that we set before. And I'm also going to create an ingress for the backend service. Okay, so let's have a look and check that this backend service is up and running. We can see it's complaining about the certificate, and that's because we're using self-signed certificates here, so we're going to just ignore that. And we can see that it's showing the message public. If I now go to the secured endpoint, I'm going to see that I cannot access it because I don't have an access token for the user with the required role. Okay, so let's move on to actually deploying the front-end application. The front-end application is a simple HTML5 application secured with Keycloak JavaScript adapter. So have a quick look at this one, and basically it has a few, it's deployed as a PHP application so that we can make it configurable with environment variables. And we can see the simple JavaScript that's used to secure it with Keycloak. So it's initializing the Keycloak adapter, and then we can see that when it's calling a request, when it's making a request to the service, it's then injecting the Keycloak token so that it can invoke this particular service. And then we can also see that it's initializing the adapter, and it's when it's authenticated, it's changing the HTML slightly to show that it's now authenticated, and when it's not authenticated, it will show some slightly different HTML. It's a very simple HTML5 application. It's not using any frameworks like, for instance, Angular.js. Okay, so let's again build the Docker container for this. It's using the PHP Docker container. And then let's deploy it onto Kubernetes. And then we also want obviously an ingress created for this front-end application as well. Okay, so here is the URL for our front-end application. Let's visit that. And again, it's complaining about the self-signed certificate, and we're going to ignore that. So here's our simple application. I'm going to click on the login button. I'm now getting redirected onto Keycloak. So we can see here it's on the Keycloak server. And then I'm going to log in. And now I'm taken back to my front-end application, and I can see now I'm logged in and my user is Stian. So now I can invoke the the public endpoint, and I can also invoke the secured endpoint. But I'm not able to invoke the admin endpoint, and that's because my user doesn't have this particular role. Okay, so let's go back to the Keycloak admin console, and let's add this role to the user so that we can now successfully invoke the admin endpoint as well. And there you go. Now we can invoke this. What's really cool about Keycloak is that you can do lots of cool stuff to your login screens without having to change your applications. And you can do all of this at runtime, of course. So let's go and enable a few options on the realm. We're going to, first of all, we're going to enable a remember me that lets the user still be logged in after he's closed the browser or restarted the laptop. We're going to also allow users to self-register. And finally, we're going to add some forgotten password flows so that the user can recover the password through email if they lose their password. And finally, we're going to also show how to do social login with social login with Keycloak, sorry. So we have a whole bunch of built-in social providers, as well as SAML and OpenID Connect allows us to authenticate with external IDPs. All I need to do to be able to log in with GitHub, for instance, is to create a client in GitHub and paste in the client ID and the client secret. I don't have one ready at the moment, so I'm just going to show how it would look like on the login screen once it's enabled. So here you go. Now I've got all these options available in the login screen, and I didn't have to make any changes to the application. No, I didn't have to restart Keycloak or anything. And of course, we have lots and lots of other features in Keycloak, such as user federation, pulling in users from LDAP or custom user store. You can create your own custom authentication flows. We have support for groups. We can view all the sessions. We can log out sessions, and so on. All right, that's it. Thanks. Bye.